This week, we ask the question, is chivalry dead? When was the last time someone held open a door for you to walk through? Or helped you to put your coat on? In this episode, we'll briefly explain the origins of chivalry and also look at some modern-day examples to see if chivalry, good manners, and correct behaviour still exists. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hello and welcome to the podcast, especially if you're a new listener. My name's Craig.
And my name's Reza.
And with nearly 60 years of teaching English between us, we'll help you improve your English and take it to the next level. Hi Reza, you sounded a bit hoarse in the introduction. I don't mean that you are a pony or a donkey or a mule or any kind of animal, but your voice sounds a bit unusual this week. Tell us what's up with that.
Indeed it is, but we have to record because the show must go on.
That's right.
The show must go on means you've got to do what you've got to do. My voice is not in its usual state at the moment because I've had a very bad throat. It's a little bit better now, but I think it's still slightly affecting the quality of my voice. So I know my voice generally doesn't sound very good anyway, in my opinion, but it's going to sound even worse today, I'm afraid. But I hope you can still understand me. For once, I'll let Craig do most of the talking, and I won't hog the conversation so much today.
Hog the conversation, talk too much. Well, as I said before we started recording, I think it sounds quite sexy. So let's see if the listeners agree with that or not. This week, we're focusing on chivalry. So what is it exactly? What is chivalry? Well, it's showing politeness to other people. It's demonstrating kindness, respect, and showing consideration towards other people, especially in everyday social situations. And it also includes respectful communication. So that's listening without interrupting, speaking politely, and treating people with dignity, regardless of their gender.
Oh, regardless of gender, you say. That's interesting. I agree with you, but I think some people identify it with male-female relationships, but that's not strictly true, is it?
No, I don't think it is, but we'll get more into that and talk about that more as we go through the episode. But that description was from a dictionary, so we'll see. We'll see if we agree or disagree on how we act with people of the opposite gender. But at its core, C-O-R-E, at its center, chivalry is about empathy and social responsibility. It reflects an awareness of others, so you're aware of people around you, and also a willingness to act in a very courteous and a very supportive way, creating a more respectful and civil society. Now, that all sounds wonderful, doesn't it? That's a good thing, right? It must be.
Yes, of course. But who came up with this idea, Craig? Where does the whole concept of chivalry come from?
Well, the word chivalry comes from the old French word, and I apologize for my pronunciation. Maybe you can correct me here. Your French is better than mine, Reza. Chivalry.
I think that's right. Chivalry.
Can you say that word again?
Let me do it in my worst throat-infected voice. Chivalry.
Yes, much more French sounding than me. Now, that word relates, or it's connected to cheval, which even I know means horse in French. And back in the day, years ago, only those well-educated, very rich and refined men had their own horse, because most people in those days, they didn't have the money or the means for their own horse. So in the Middle Ages, chivalry was the code of conduct followed by knights. Now, when I say knights, be careful of the spelling. There's a silent K there. It's Knights. GHTS. If you think of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, those knights had a code of conduct, a special way of behaving that guided how they were in battle when they were fighting and also in everyday life. And this code of chivalry included values like being loyal to your lord, the person who owned the land and who was in charge of everything, the lord of the manor. Also having courage and honor in combat when you're fighting, and protecting the weak, people who are not as strong as you. So looking after people who didn't have the strength or the position to be a knight, the weaker people. And respecting women was another value. And honesty and courtesy, being kind and courteous and honest to other people. Those of you who have watched Game of Thrones may remember Brienne of Tarth, the really tall blonde lady. She had all these qualities and demonstrated those qualities as a knight, all of the character traits that I just mentioned.
But over time, as knights disappeared, and we don't mean knights disappeared and there was only daytime. No, we mean knights with a K, again, those people. As knights disappeared and society changed, the military meaning faded, it slowly went away. But the more kind of moral and social aspect of the values, they remained. And so today, chivalry no longer refers to fighting or warfare, as it did in medieval times. Instead, today, it's really just for describing being polite, respectful, and considerate in your behavior in modern life.
So in this podcast, we want to ask the question, does chivalry still exist? And make sure you listen to the end, because we'll be giving our opinion on if we think chivalry still exists in the UK and in Spain. Those are the two countries that we know quite well. But first, let's look at some examples of actions, things people do that might be considered chivalrous, and that is the adjective of the noun chivalry, a chivalrous person, so that we can decide if chivalry is alive and well in today's society. And you can also think of this maybe as having good manners, to behave well in public as well. So the first thing on the list here, and remember you can see our list of chivalrous acts and behaviour on the website. Go to inglespodcast.com/607 and you'll see the notes to this episode with all the vocabulary. So the first one is opening the door for someone and letting them go first. Do you do that, Reza?
I do virtually every day of my life. I consider it a very important thing to do. I like doing it, and I appreciate it when other people do it for me. And I must admit, it bothers me when I do it for someone and they don't recognize the act whatsoever.
That was going to be my next question. Does it annoy you when people don't say thank you?
It does. Well, they don't necessarily have to say thank you. That's good. But even just a look of recognition, some kind of gesture like, looking at me as if to say, oh, thank you, but without actually saying it. And it particularly bothers me if the person has the attitude of kind of like, of course I'm going to go through the door. It's my God-given right. I'm more important than you. That bothers me. And if I get that vibe from people sometimes like, of course I'm going through the door. I'm better than you. And I almost feel like letting the door drop on them, but I don't.
Close on them, you mean, in their face.
Drop onto their... Yeah,
but do you think that's a cultural norm, a way of behaving that you've kind of imported from the UK to Spain? Because I've noticed that it's not as acknowledged and recognised here in Spain as it is in the UK. So maybe we have transferred our cultural norms over here with the expectation that people will behave the same way.
You say not as, I think those couple of words are vital. So it does happen in Spain, but it's true, it's not as extended. Yes, it happens. Spanish people do it. I've seen it. I see it every day of my life. I see Spanish people holding the door open. But I also get surprised at how many Not surprised. Sorry, I'm not surprised anymore. I was surprised at first how many Spanish people don't do it. So
don't open the door, don't say thank you.
Yeah, both things, yeah.
Both things.
So I've noticed that people do it, but at first it really surprised me how many people don't do it. Far more people in the UK do it. I'm sorry if we sound racist. It's just an observation. It's a fact. And I bet, I haven't been there very often, but I bet that lots of people do it in certain other countries as well. Like in the United States, I imagine it's very common. But I have to be honest, it's not so common in Spain. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's been my experience as well. But as I say, I think it might be a cultural thing rather than just disrespect or bad behavior. Let's take a quick break here because I know you listen to this podcast to take your English to the next level. But what about your speaking? Is your fluency improving? Are you happy with your speaking skills? My conversation course focuses on making you a more confident and more fluent English speaker. You'll join me and a small group of motivated students, and we'll meet on Zoom and have topical discussions, role plays, debates, and presentations that will expand your vocabulary and help you express yourself effectively in English. So be proactive and take the first step towards becoming a confident and fluent English speaker. Send me an email today to craig@inglespodcast.com and I'll send you details of the next online conversation course. Thanks for listening. Now let's get back to the podcast. The next thing on the list is helping a lady, or helping anyone actually, with their coat or their jacket. So you're just about to leave the house, I go and get your jacket for you, Reza, and I hold your jacket while you put it on. Is that something you would do, or could it be considered anti-feminist these days?
You might be surprised at my answer here. Not only do I not do it, but I don't like it when people do it for me.
Makes you feel uncomfortable.
Yes, I don't like people holding my jacket up for me to put on. I appreciate the gesture. I don't hold it against them. To hold something against someone is to resent it. It's not that. I just find it not at all practical. It's much easier for me to be completely in charge of putting on my own jacket. I find it's a purely practical question.
Yeah, you do have two arms and you are able to move them, so you can do it by yourself. But do you think that it's become an anti-feminist act these days? Because it's showing masculinity if you're doing it for a lady and the lady doesn't like it.
I wouldn't do it for anybody except my partner. And even then, from time to time, I wouldn't dare do it for any lady who wasn't already my partner. I think you've risked getting into big trouble there. What about you?
You're getting into hot water, you could say, getting into trouble. No, I agree. I absolutely agree. I don't think I would do it to anybody, maybe my partner, but even my wife wouldn't like it, I don't think, if I held her coat or jacket for her to put on. No. The next one is a bit more extreme, perhaps, a bit more tragic. And sadly, quite recently, we've had a very bad train crash here in Spain. But protecting women and children first in an emergency or an accident.
It's a classic, isn't it? You often hear in films, particularly, historical dramas, things like about the Titanic or, other things like that, people shouting, women and children first to the lifeboats, for example. Women and children first. It's a standard expression in English. Women and children first means men, be chivalrous, help the women and children first. Don't get onto that lifeboat, or don't save yourself yet, save them first.
Which makes a lot of sense if you think about it. Men are typically stronger physically, and it's the women who bear the children. They have the children. So in order for the race to continue, it makes more sense to protect the women and also the children who are growing up in society. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I think that's true.
Yes, I agree. That's one which is based on pure logic.
Yes.
Children are the future, and women can produce the future in the form of babies. Men can't. It's logical.
Exactly. The next one is escorting a lady home to her door, especially at night, but not, and this is important, not entering her house. So imagine you're out on a date, on a romantic engagement, and you're taking the lady home. Maybe you're in the car, or maybe you're coming out of the taxi, and you walk the lady to her door. Chivalrous behaviour. Do you agree?
Yeah, but you don't go in. You're a gentleman if you lead her to her door. But then if you ask if you might be invited in, then suddenly you're not a gentleman anymore. Quite the opposite.
Unless you're offered a late night cup of coffee, perhaps.
If she offers you, right, but if you invite yourself, suddenly all the good work you've done has gone down the drain. You've thrown it all away.
But is it chivalry and good behaviour, or is it the hope of a late night kiss at the door?
A bit of both. Why not?
Peck on the cheek?
Don't tell me, surely. I mean, there might be some angry listener who writes in or leaves an audio, but there's nothing sexist about hoping, is there? Yes, there's many's a time I've walked a lady home and hoped they asked me in. Sometimes they did, by the way, and sometimes they didn't. But hoping's not sexist, is it?
No. Yeah, I once walked a lady home, and I asked if I could come in to see her stamp collection, but that's quite embarrassing. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, it is true. Yeah, it is true.
Did it work?
No. It didn't.
Had she mentioned that she really had a stamp collection?
No, I just thought it was an original line, and I thought maybe this might sort of get me inside the house, but no, it didn't.
I'm not surprised.
She didn't want to show me her stamps,
or anything else,
for that matter. Yeah, let's move on, I think. So offering your seat on public transport. Yes, I think this is still alive and well, even in Spain, here in Valencia. I see young people, which often surprises me, offering their seats standing up when an elderly person, notice that use of elderly there and not old. Elderly is a bit more polite. So elderly people who are a bit infirm, let's say, they can't really stand for a long time on their feet. I see many people in Spain offering their seats. Is that your experience? You travel more on buses than I do.
Well, I do. And it's funny you should ask this question. The timing is very interesting because last year, for a couple of months, until about December, actually, November, December, I had a very bad ankle. And I had to use a walking stick for a while. I'm okay now, but I had a very inflamed ankle. And so I had got on a lot of buses and metros with a walking stick, and a lot of people offered me their seat.
Yeah.
But I was also a bit disappointed that a hell of a lot of people didn't, And I'm the sort of person who usually offers a seat when I can. And so to have the boot on the other foot, that means
it's a good analogy in this case.
That means roles are reversed. So instead of being the able-bodied person, I was the person with a physical problem. And if you see someone with a cane and they're limping a bit, clearly they got a problem. Well, quite a few people didn't bother to offer me their seat, and they could have easily. So I would say for Valencia, mixture. Some do, some don't.
Yeah. Okay. Also connected kind of to that is respecting zebra crossings when you're driving and stopping for pedestrians. Now, this is a pet peeve of mine. A pet peeve is something that specifically annoys you or especially winds you up. If something winds you up, then it makes you very frustrated and angry. So when I'm on a zebra crossing or just about to cross the road and a car doesn't respect the zebra crossing and stop for me as a pedestrian, I get very, very angry.
Yes, and let's be honest, Valencia hasn't got a great track record in this. It still happens a lot, doesn't it, here?
Yeah, it still happens a lot. Yeah, it happens, I think, more than what I remember in the UK, although I think times have changed and maybe it's been declining for years. So I think it also happens in the UK quite often as well.
Craig, what about carrying heavy bags for someone who needs help? Do you often perform that chivalrous act?
Yes, I do, actually, especially with neighbours here, because the entrance to our block of flats doesn't have a ramp, which is a slope, only steps. I think there are about 12 or 13 steps going up, and we have elderly people in the building who sometimes struggle with heavy shopping. It's difficult for them to lift their wheelie shopping trolleys and their heavy bags. So if I see someone in trouble or struggling or trying to lift things, then I often go to help and lift it up. What about you?
Yes, I would for elderly people or somebody who has really, really heavy bags, not just because they have a couple of bags from the local supermarket, but if they've got a lot of bags or if they're old, yeah, I would.
Next on the list is walking on the side of the road or walking on the pavement, a side of the pavement to shield or protect your companion from the traffic. So if you're walking with a partner or with a friend, you make sure that you put yourself on the more dangerous side, which is nearer to the cars. Do you do that?
I do with people that I know quite well. But if I'm in a large group of people, I don't really bother. But if there's just a couple of us, I would tend to do that. And you?
If it's a very busy road, and sometimes roads in this area, well, not so much in the centre of the city, but outside the city in the countryside, there isn't always pavement. You have to walk literally on the road, but to the side. So in that situation, if it's dangerous, then I would definitely walk on the outside to protect my wife. But I don't often think about it. In fact, a few years ago, my wife complained a lot that I wasn't considerate when I was walking with her. And she sometimes walked into trees or lampposts because I was kind of taking up too much space. So that made me aware of it. So now I'm very careful when I'm walking with her.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because if you don't mind, I'm going to go off at a slight angle. It's not exactly chivalry, but it's a question of good manners, I think. I'm going to really stick my neck out here, and I'm going
What does that mean?
To stick your neck out means to do something which could create a bad response. You're going to say something very frank. But here it goes. After 25 years of knowing Valencian society very well, here we go. A lot of Valencians don't really know how pavements work. It's a way to know that someone's a genuine Valencian. Let me get to the point and then receive all the criticism. Even to this day, it makes me chuckle, that means laugh in a funny way, at how many people in Valencia, and they will be Valencians, they won't be foreigners, will insist on walking down the middle of the pavement. They could go to one side, but they won't. The middle's for them. So that means that you now can't get past, but you could have easily got past if they went to one side. Nah, they don't fancy it. They want to walk down the middle. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I noticed that when I first moved here, and I've kind of got used to it. So yeah, I just kind of move around them now. And that's noticeable coming from the UK. You do notice those habits of people in the street. Escalators as well, people not staying on one side of the escalator so that you can pass on the left or on the right, for example.
I literally lasted 5 seconds in the London Underground. It was the very first time I'd ever taken it. Had to go to or from Heathrow Airport. 5 seconds, honestly. And it was just because I had a lot of heavy bags. 5 seconds on the escalator, and I was going to get myself in the right position, but I just didn't have enough time. I was being a bit slow before I got my first, get the fucking way. Literally, I'm not joking. It was my first minute. My bag was occupying.
So they shouted and made you stand to one side.
And they did shout. It was a shout that made everybody in the area's head turn around. So a guy with a really strong Cockney accent, it really was saying that he wanted me to get my bag out of the way, and he was quite right. But come on, I'd only delayed him for 1/4 of a second. I thought his response was a bit aggressive. So Valencians, Don't do it in London. You will be told off very quickly, as I was.
Yeah, friendly Londoners. Not very friendly, actually. Not friendly at all. What about when you're driving, letting cars merge in front of you? If you merge, then you gradually join the traffic to come together. You're merging, you're coming together with the traffic. When cars come from a side road or a slip road on a motorway, for example, to join a motorway, that's called a slip road, or to leave a motorway is also a slip road. Letting people in the traffic. Any thoughts on that, Reza?
Yes, again, I'm afraid I have to say it's more common where I come from, Belfast, than in Valencia or Alicante, two places that I'm often in. Some people will let you slip in, but a lot of people just won't. They won't do it. I've noticed that not letting you in, and there's a big queue behind you, means that a huge queue is going to form as a result of not doing it. And it was just literally a couple of seconds to let you in, but there are people who won't do it. They won't do it. Those 2 seconds to avoid a major traffic jam, they won't do it. They're not going to let you in. I've noticed that. And there's more of those people in Spain than there are in Ireland.
What about standing up when someone enters the room? I noticed in many Asian countries, kids at school, the teacher comes into the classroom, all the pupils, all the students stand up to show respect to the teacher. I don't think that happens in your classes, does it?
No. Actually, it did. It did in a class I had. I used to teach many years ago police officers.
Oh, really?
And yes, and as part of the whole protocol of the way they were supposed to behave, officially, they had to stand up when the teacher came into the room, and they did.
How did you feel?
I felt really embarrassed. I thought that they were, pulling my leg. I thought it was a joke. And I mentioned it to another teacher, and he said, no, they're supposed to. That's what happens. But you can tell them not to if you want. I've told them not to, he said. So after the second class, he said, listen, you don't have to stand up. But until I said that, they were expected to stand up. But this is police officers. Mm-hmm. Stand up for me, because in a way, I outranked them. It's strange, isn't it?
Outranking meaning you're
to be a higher rank than them,
a higher position
in the pecking order of things, because I was their teacher. We're talking about fully uniformed police officers with guns, standing up for it. It's like, wow, it's this real feeling of power. 30 police officers in a class standing up for you. Wow.
I like the younger kids in Asia showing respect by standing up, and I think if that were incorporated in classes here in Europe, that would be a very good thing to teach the children respect for their elders and respect for the teacher or whoever. So I think it's a good thing. Obviously, with adults, that's another thing. You wouldn't expect people to stand up in a business meeting, for example, just because the head of the company walks in. But I do think it's important at schools.
Yeah, it would be a good idea. Craig, what about pulling out a chair before someone sits down? So a chair, not your chair, for another person. So you see someone's coming, you pull their chair out from away from the table, they move in front of it, and then you push it in for them to sit down. Do you do that?
No, I wouldn't do that. I think that's similar to the jacket and coat example. I mean, I've got 2 arms. Why can't I pull my chair out myself? I don't know if a lady might think it's disrespectful if I don't do it, but I don't think I've ever done it.
I think these days there's more chance of a lady thinking you're sexist if you do it. I wouldn't risk it. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a good chance the lady feels, what? You think I can't?
I can pull my own chair out.
I would be very, very cautious about that.
Yeah, I agree. Our next one is letting others...
Sorry, Craig, can I just say something? Oh, no, I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, actually, it's exactly what you did. Letting others speak without interrupting.
Sorry.
I think that is very cultural. And obviously in Spain, I was speaking about this yesterday, actually, with Lynn on the live stream, but Spain, Southern Europe, Latin American countries, it's quite common to jump in and speak in a casual conversation, interrupt somebody. Not so common in Scandinavia and Northern Europe. Do you agree?
Yes, and people have said to me sometimes in groups in Spain, they've said to me in Spanish, they've said, Reza, what's up with you? You're not saying much today. And I've had to say, it's because you're not giving me a chance to speak.
I haven't had a chance.
I'm waiting for my time, but you wouldn't let me. It's like, oh, well, don't be like that. Jump in there. But I prefer to let people get to the end.
Me too. Yeah. Let them finish what they're saying. Otherwise, you're not showing that you're listening to the person. The next is using polite language, such as please, thank you, after you go ahead, for example. And I think, again, this is cultural because I know when I first came to Spain, I said please and thank you for absolutely everything. And I was having lunch one day and the waiter brought something to the table and I said, oh, thank you. And he obviously was used to speaking to tourists. And he says, you don't have to say thank you every time I bring something to the table. And suddenly that second, I realized the cultural differences and that we say please and thank you a lot more in the UK, don't we?
We do. It's kind of expected. You're considered a bit rude if you don't. But in Spain, you're not considered rude if you don't.
No.
In fact, I've been in situations where with people that I had a fairly close relationship with, it bothered them that I was saying it too often. With someone who's supposed to be your friend, if you say it too often, they take the attitude of like, I'm your friend. You don't need to say please and thank you for everything. You're being a bit distant if you do it, right?
Yeah. So does it bother you when Spanish people don't say please and thank you so much?
No, not necessarily. It depends on other facial expressions and body language and other words they use. I can understand it.
Well, that's interesting because before we were talking about respecting zebra crossings and stopping for pedestrians that we both agreed annoys us. So we get annoyed at that, which is a cultural difference, but not really at people not saying please and thank you, which is another cultural difference. So I think it's interesting that some things really bother us and some things don't, that we've accepted them.
Yes, well, partly because the zebra crossing thing, it could literally put your life in danger. If I'm expecting them to stop, but they don't, well, they hit me, what? But not saying thank you is not going to put my life in danger. So that's probably something to do with it, I think.
Next is helping someone up from the floor, from the ground, if they trip or fall. Now, I had an experience with this quite recently. My sister came to visit me here in Valencia, and she fell over in the street. She has a dodgy knee. If something's dodgy, then it's not working properly. It's not correct. It's not right. It's dodgy. So because of her dodgy knee, she fell over in the street in public, and immediately 3 or 4 people, pedestrians, rushed over. They ran over to help her to her feet and to check if she was okay, which I was really pleased to see.
Yes, that doesn't surprise me. I've noticed that in Spain, people are very good for that. In fact, I stuck my neck out. I took a risk earlier, and now I'm going to even things up. To even things up is to like set a balance. I think the Spanish are better than the British for that. I reckon there's more chance that if you fall over in the street, people will rush to help you up in Valencia than most British cities.
I agree. I go along with that. I think that's true. And our final one on the list, the last one before we actually make a decision if chivalry still exists, the captain never abandoning a sinking ship until everyone else has left first. Now, this seems to me to be the code of conduct for the sea, doesn't it? It's a maritime tradition that the captain stays with the ship. Does that come under chivalry?
I'm not sure if is it a legal obligation on the part of the captain? I'm not sure it is.
Well, I don't know if you remember in 2012, the Costa Concordia disaster, which sank, and the captain left the ship before most of the passengers. He just decided to leave the ship and run away basically from his responsibilities. And they asked him why he did it. And he said, I tripped and fell into a lifeboat while I was helping passengers. So that was his excuse.
Oh, my God.
And to answer your question, he was convicted of manslaughter and abandoning ship. So apparently it is a legal obligation.
Yeah, I remember that case very well. It caught my attention. But I think, if I recall, the captain isn't obliged to stay to till every single person is off the ship. But there are certain things that he or she is obliged to do. But for example, if there are certain passengers that are unaccounted for, that means you don't know where they are and you've no idea where they are, then I think the captain is allowed to leave the ship.
Well, in this particular case, he was ordered to reboard the
Yep.
ship. To board is to go on the ship or on the plane. And if you reboard, then you go back again and do it again, get on it. He was ordered to do it by the Coast Guard, and he disobeyed. So he didn't get back on the ship.
Yeah, because for him it was really, really flagrant. That means very, very obvious.
Yes.
But in the past, captains took it really, really seriously. Like in the film, now a classic about the Titanic, it really was the case. The captain did stay until the end, and people expected him to. Until every single person can be accounted for on that ship, you couldn't get off the ship. Even though you knew they're probably dead already, the captains just had to stay there and go down with the ship, and they did it.
Yeah, well, that was back in, was it 1912, the Titanic? So it's exactly 100 years before the Costa Concordia.
Which I think, I must admit, I find it a very, very chivalrous act. To me, that's right up there because you know you're going to die. It's going to be a very horrible death. It's not going to be quick. It's going to be cold, horrible. You're going to be on your own. If you can do that, you can say that's a truly chivalrous person.
So, does chivalry still exist, Rezo, in your view?
Yes, I think it does. And I'm glad it does. What about you?
I'm going to say partly. So, maybe not 100%. And I think with time, we're losing in some areas, some chivalrous behavior. And I think it also very much depends on culture. So depending on where you are, as we've shown here with our UK, Spain comparisons, that I think it depends on the cultural norms of where you happen to be living.
Yes, because of course it can be interpreted as a negative thing, even if you're being chivalrous. I wonder, I don't have much experience of Scandinavian countries. I've been briefly in Finland, but I think you've been in Finland, but also you've been in Norway, yes, and Sweden, and Iceland, haven't you?
And Denmark.
And Denmark. Pretty much all of them, right?
Yeah.
And I always think of those countries as probably where most equality is most obvious. Do you reckon in those countries there's more chance of you getting into trouble for trying to be chivalrous?
Getting into trouble. Well, I was there as a tourist. Obviously, it's a different thing when you're living in a country on a day-to-day basis. But I didn't see people ever being criticized for not doing what's expected in public. But I did see a lot of respect for things. For example, turning off your phone or not having your phone ring and not speaking on your phone on public transport. That really surprised me, and I liked it. The fact that there was silence in the carriage, maybe people were speaking to each other, but nobody was screaming down a phone or having to listen to this stupid music playing because someone's making a phone call. So I really like that. But that was the only thing that stands out to me, the only thing I remember about Scandinavia. But it's a very, very considerate. Oh, and there was another thing. I remember seeing a woman help a homeless person and speak to the homeless person, make sure they're okay, ask them if they needed to go to hospital, ask them if they needed money for food, which I thought was wonderful because in many places, and especially in London, homeless people are just stepped over and ignored. And it was really nice to see someone paying attention to people who need it.
And Craig, we've spoken already about the possible sexism of chivalry. Do you think that some men use it as a cover for sexism? For example, walking that lady home at night, that's chivalrous? Or is it because you want to make sure that she goes home? You know what she's doing. She's not going on to a party. She's not with anyone else. Is it controlling in a way? Can men use chivalry towards women as a way of controlling them?
That's a good question. I think we'd have to ask a woman because it's difficult for me as a man to have an opinion on that. But well, let me ask you this: would you pay on a first date with a woman if you went out for a meal?
I would offer to, I would want to, yes. But if she insisted that I didn't, that it was 50-50, then I would agree. But originally at the start, I would want to pay. And you?
Yeah, the same. I would offer and expect to pay, but I'd be quite happy to split the bill and pay 50-50. But what do you think? It's your turn to practice your English. You've heard our opinions. But what are yours? Does chivalry still exist where you live, in your country, in your culture, in your city? Have you noticed any cultural differences in chivalry from one culture to another, especially if you've lived in different countries? We'd love to hear from you on this and see what you think, so why not send us a voice message? You can do that by going to speakpipe.com, that's speakpipe.com, /Ingles podcast, or you could write to us if you prefer. Emails go to me, Craig, CRAIG, at inglespodcast.com, or you could write to Reza at belfastreza, REZA, at gmail.com. And if you're a Spanish speaker and you want to improve your English with free and paid resources, you can visit the Mansion Ingles website at mansioningles.com. And for paid products, you can browse the online store at store.mansioningles.net. And before we go out the door this week, we can't leave without thanking our lovely Patreon supporters. These are people who donate to the podcast. And when you join the Patreon program, you get instant access to the transcriptions of this podcast and also a monthly Zoom chat with me so that you can practice your speaking. For more information, there's a link in the show notes at inglespodcast.com. And we can't say thank you to everybody who's supporting us on Patreon, but we will say hello and thank you to our most recent Patreon supporters who have joined us this month. And they are Emilio Tamburini, Uziv, that's my good friend Lumir. Thank you very much for joining Patreon, Lumir. And Samuel Perez, and Kendi Aparecido Osiro, and Maria Elisa Alvarez Torres. Thank you to you and to every one of our lovely Patreon supporters. Reza, what's next week?
Australia.
We're going to Australia next week. Someone's requested another episode in our series on countries. So join us next week for some fun facts and information about Australia and improve your English. If you enjoyed this podcast, please tell your friends so that more people can listen. And until next week, have a lovely week ahead. It's goodbye from me.
And it's bye-bye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.